Hey, everybody, I'm going to put the link to this, to all my videos on in Schoology. So it'll be a link to the playlist of all the lecture videos that I do. All right. So if you miss a day, you can come in, watch a video, or if you want to rewatch something that was said in class, this is where you'll go to do it. All right. And while you guys were at lunch, I found the library pictures. So this is from last spring. Students went to the Lone Star Library, found the art books, found books that apply to their artist. And now, you guys, for first semester, it's going to be slightly more difficult because you won't have an artist. So, but your research project will be a little bit easier because you don't have an artist. Finding a book might be slightly more difficult because you don't have an artist, but you should be able to find a book about the era of your artwork. All right. So, for example, if you're looking at Egyptian art, you should easily find a book about Egyptian art. All right, I'm going to escape this and we're going to get into our lecture. All right, we are going back to France now. And we are going to go to the Peck Merle Cave. Again, this should be in purple, so you won't need to know Peck Merle Cave for the test. But in 1922, three brothers or three friends, two brothers and a friend, were exploring the cave by their house, and they had been exploring this cave for years. 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And they found this. So, what does this look like? Yeah, it looks like a horse, right? And much like the Venus of Willendorf, I think that the artist saw a shape in the rock that reminded them of a horse, like the horse's head right there. And I don't think that that was carved by the Paleolithic artist. So they saw the shape of the horse's head and then made the horse or drew the horse around that to make that fit. And you can also see the handprints. Now, they wonder if the spots on the horse are meant to reference a specific spotted horse, which is common in the era, or are the spots in on the horse of the artwork, is that some sort of symbolism, or is it some part of some sort of religious ritual? Nobody knows because you can't ask them. They didn't write it down. And they found horses on all kinds of walls, and people have connected the horse drawings to actual horses that are in the region where they were found. So besides horses, what do you see in this picture? Right, you see the hands. Somebody said hands. So handprints are very common in Paleolithic cave painting. And what is going on is that they will put their hand up on the wall and then they'll blow the pigment through a tube, maybe a reed, maybe it's a bone, some sort of a tube that they make. And it's like the first spray paint. All right. And then when you take your hand away, it leaves a negative image. So why are these hands here? Nobody really knows. There's a lot of guessing going on. Is it some sort of, are they the signatures of a cult? Or are these important community members? Is it kids playing around? Is it the artist's signature? Is it, oh, cool, look what I did, and then just, and then that's it? And in this image right here, it shows the Paleolithic artist using that tube to blow the pigment around the hands. Now, if you look at the walls, if this is a Paleolithic artist, what's wrong with the pictures that he's drawn? Right. Yeah, there's people. All right. So you have bows and arrows up here. You have somebody throwing a spear down there. All right. That's likely what they were doing, but they didn't, the Paleolithic artist didn't use or depict humans. And in here, in this one, the artist is using a paintbrush. Paintbrushes didn't come until far later. So this one is incorrect, but still funny. All right, so now we're going to Lascaux, and Lascaux is a name that I want you to know. When we're going out of the house to get into the car to go somewhere, I tell my daughters, I say, like one caveman said to the others, "Let's go," and they roll their eyes at me because it's not a funny joke. All right, so this is the entrance to the cave. So in September of 1940, Marcel Ravadat, who's 18, and he was with his dog, Robot. That is an awesome name for a dog. In fact, I think my next dog is going to be named Robot. All right, Robot fell into a hole, and Ravadat returned with friends to go and get the dog, and the dog went 50 feet down a shaft. They thought it was a secret entrance to a nearby mansion, but it turned out to be a cave that had significant cave art. And like I told you at the beginning of the period today, if there's two things that I want you to remember about prehistoric art, it's Venus of Willendorf and the Hall of the Bulls. Now, in these illustrations, the animals are different size, they're different kinds, and they're going different directions. And they were also painted at different times. So this is not all one big picture of at one time and at one place. This is not a herd. All these animals are unrelated to each other. And if we get closer, well, before we get closer, what kind of view are we looking at these animals from? Starts with a P, ends with an E. Yes, people are saying profile view. That is correct. So it is a side view of them. But if this is a side view, look at the horns. Are the horns at side view? If we look at a bull with horns from the side view, and then we look at it from the front view, is that what we're seeing here? No, like the horns are a front view and the bull is at a side view. All right, that is incorrect. It's and that's what we call twisted perspective. And remember how I told you that Paleolithic art almost never has people in it? Lascaux Cave has one of those almost never moments. This figure right here is a person. Now, granted, he has a bird head. All right. anyways, we have a bison over here that's been disemboweled, and over here we have a rhinoceros. And then he has a bird on a staff. So they think that he is some sort of a magician or shaman or something. And also, experts believe that this is some sort of narrative. It might be telling a story, and it'll be one of the first times that that Paleolithic artists tell a story. So the hunter or the shaman disembowels the bison and then gets run over by the rhinoceros. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just guessing here. Yeah, sure. Hmm. All right, and my favorite meme from prehistory: when you're sick, cave painting of you killing a cyber tooth only gets 7 ooga boogas, and he has a confused unga bunga look on his face. I think that's funny. All right, now we're going to go to the Chauvet Cave. Don't need to know the name of this cave. I want you to know Lascaux is the only cave I want you to remember. All right, and this one you can see it's a tourist area, right? It's all built up, and you can see all the tourists outside because inside it looks like this. Has anybody been to Natural Bridge Caverns over in San Antonio? Yeah, this is what it reminds me of. All right, and in this cave, there are images of animals, hundreds of animals. And there's something unique going on at this particular cave and not the others. We'll get to it in just a second. What kind of animals do you see here? Yeah, that looks a lot like a bear up there, and this one looks like a bear, and that's like some sort of a dog looking right there. These look like felines, like lionesses or cougars or something. But this is the unique thing at this cave. What did this artist do that the others did not? Especially, I'm talking especially about the Lascaux cave, the last cave that we look at. Say it louder. That is correct. She said they did the profile view correctly. Look at those horns on the steeds up here, and they are correctly at a side view, and they're even overlapping each other, which is unusual for this time period. So these artists were a little bit more observant than the previous artists. All right, and then what do you see here and here? Yeah, spots. Hey, you know what this reminds? And this is artists. They are blowing the pigment through a tube onto the wall. And you know what this reminds me of? When you're at like the hardware store or at Walmart and at the spray paint, people are testing the colors of the spray paint. That's what it reminds me of. All right. Are there any questions about Paleolithic art? All right. We're going to move on to Neolithic art. Um, I know. Did you guys ever have? What year were you guys born? I'm gonna guess 2007. All right. My daughter's a junior. She was born in 2007. Did you guys ever have textbooks growing up? All right. Sometimes in textbooks, especially in the 80s, people would draw on top of the pictures of a textbook. So here somebody drew on top of Paleolithic textbook, they made it look like Metallica was playing instruments, and that is hilarious. And it's also vandalism. All right, we're going to look at Neolithic art. We're still in chapter 1. So in your notes, you can make a little header for Neolithic art. You can put it at the top, at the header. I also want to remind you, as you're making your notes, writing the chapter at the top. We're still in chapter 1. You can also write Neolithic art up at the top. You can write Paleolithic art at the top. All right, the Neolithic era. What does neo mean? New, that is correct. What does lith mean? Stone. So we're talking about the new Stone Age. And the general date for Neolithic era to start is 9000 BC. Although all over the planet Earth, the difference between Paleolithic and Neolithic happened at different times. For example, in the Americas, the Neolithic era began somewhere between 2500 BC to about 500 AD, or in Northern and Western Europe, 4000 to 1800 BC. In Central Europe, 5000 to 2000 BC. In East Asia, 6000 to 2000 BC. In Europe, 7000 to 2000 BC. And in Africa, 8000 to 2000 BC. So it happened in different times around the globe. But for our purposes, it basically is at 9000 BC because that is when the ice melts and there are changes in human behavior. What I really want you guys to understand is the difference between Paleolithic and Neolithic. Paleolithic lived a nomadic lifestyle. In order to eat that night, they had to kill their food that day, or they had to pick their berries that day. They did not have a way of storing that food for a long time. The food would go bad if they didn't eat it right away. So if they're going out and picking berries, after a while, there's no more berries. Or if they go out hunting for the animals, after a while, they kill all the animals in the area. There's no more animals to kill. So then they have to move to a new part that has berries and animals for them to eat. And these guys, these Paleolithic people, are just surviving. That's their whole life, is just surviving, eating and making babies. The Neolithic era, they learn how to build fences and keep those animals in fences and breed the animals so that you always have animals. You never run out of animals. So there's always a food source for that. They learn how to farm and grow things. So there's always vegetables and berries and fruits that you can always eat. That way you don't have to continuously have to move. The Paleolithic era, they a lot of them lived in caves, but also they would have temporary shelter because they had to move. They would break it down and take it with them. Whereas in the Neolithic era, they don't have to move. So they build a house, and whenever that house gets rickety, they build another one better than the first. Or one person in the village gets very good at building houses and buildings, and every time he builds one, he improves upon it. And so the civilization is then be able to thrive, and you begin to get villages and cities. And that's a big difference between Neolithic and Paleolithic. I'll let you do this while I check out these voices in the hall. All right, are we done with the slide? Anybody need more time? All right. Ready to move on? All right, so we are going to go to Asia. Where is Asia on this map? Upper left, upper right, lower right. Where is it? Upper right. There we go. All right. This whole big area is Asia. Asia is really big. All right. And now we're going to look for Western Asia, which is also known as the Middle East. Where is the Middle East? What's it close to? That's right. It's close to Africa. And we're going to look for Israel. Where in the Middle East is Israel? Right. It's right on the coast. A very tiny little country right on the coast of the Middle East. All right. So here is, and then we're going to look for the West Bank. All right. The West Bank is on that side. And then inside the West Bank, we're going to look for Jericho. And there is Jericho. All right. Now, look at this photograph of the city. And Jericho is this hill right here. All right. This is the ancient city of Jericho. Tel Es Sultan. It's a hill in the middle of the city. It looks like a natural hill, but it is not. It is man-made. And it is the former city of Jericho. So let me explain a little bit about why a city looks like a hill. The ancient civilizations do not have the technology in architecture that we do. They made their buildings out of mud brick. You take a bunch of mud and you form it into a brick. You let it dry, it becomes a brick. And these mud bricks are not very stable. They're more stable than the previous material they were using, but they're not all that great. This is not the kind of architecture that's going to last for thousands of years. So what happens is they build these buildings out of mud brick. Eventually, the building collapses, and what do? They build right on top of it. And then that collapses, they build on top of it, and that collapses. And that's why you have a hill, right? That hill is a series of collapsed buildings and cities. And you can see it in the layers of the mud brick. Excavations reveal collapsed buildings on top of collapsed buildings. Eventually, it makes a hill. But we're not interested in the city. We're going to look at one particular building on the city. So, Jericho was a walled city, it had a wall around it, and there was one tower on the city, and a very simple um, construction. It wasn't simple for them, but it was this cylinder with a hole in it where it had some stairs. And at the time, this was the tallest building in the world. If you look at this figure right here, that gives you a sense of, it's like from there to there. What would you say that's what, 30 feet? Maybe 25 feet? That was the tallest building in the world. And I'm showing you this piece of architecture because this is in a long line of people trying to build the tallest building in the world. Right? The Egyptians were the tallest building in the world for thousands of years, and then the cathedrals, and then the Eiffel Tower, and then skyscrapers, and so on and so on. That humans are continuing to try to build the tallest building in the world. And in the ancient world, this tower, the one that is below ground level, was the tallest building in the world. And that's the Tower of Jericho. This structure is unlike anything found before. It's the first tower. It's tremendously technological achievement for the time period. And they only used stone tools to make this. And like I said, it's the first in a long line of monumental architecture. 28 feet tall. I was close. I said 30 feet. I said 25 feet. It is multifunction. That means it was most likely used as a guard tower, but also for religious ceremonies, to look out for spotting animals and spotting enemies. And the high position was to watch over their own people as well. It was also an astronomical observatory, and it was also a show of strength and power. Can you imagine that people, non-citizens of Jericho, walking up to the city and seeing a tower that they've never seen before? And like, whoa, how did you guys build that? They must be better at building than we are. This was also a public meeting place. And the tower is the first attempt at an organized civic manipulation. All right, so there is a stairwell inside the tower that goes up to the top and lets the somebody go from the interior into the top of the tower. Uh, there's a mountain nearby, and when it casts its shadow on the tower, on June 21st, the very tip of this, that is an important mark or important time for the people of Jericho. Like I said, ancient Jericho was a walled city, and it's the city of first. It's the first. Is that it? Is that for us? All right. I'm going to go and finish with this Jericho, and then we'll start tomorrow. But it is the first known settlement surrounded by walls. It is the first evidence of group cooperation beyond a single clan. It is the first significant evidence of larger scale communal labor. It's the first place where animals were domesticated, and it's the first wide-scale architecture. And we will start with Turkey tomorrow.